What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. Yes, we're talking about something different today. We're talking about the latest addition to the ever-expanding Walking Dead universe, The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. Now, this has probably been the most anticipated project that the AMC Walking Dead universe has done in a couple of years. You know, we had of course, the end of the main series. We had the spin-offs with Daryl, and we had the spin-off with Maggie and Negan, and The World Beyond, and Fear of the Walking Dead, and something else over here, and something else over there. But this is the one that everybody really wanted to see because it was the return of Andrew Lincoln playing the role of Rick Grimes, and also the return of Denai Guerrero playing Michonne. And probably one of the most beloved on-screen couples of the last 10 years in mainstream media is Rick and Michonne. And this had a lot of excitement to it, but it also had some trepidation because some of the spin-off shows, like Tales of the Walking Dead, from okay to bad, a lot of the general public, which, it's crazy to think at one point in time this series had 33 million people watching season premieres and season finales. That's a crazy number. The numbers apparently, by the way, seem to be pretty good on AMC Plus. They can't really, there's not like tracking of it that's reported, but they're assuming the numbers are a lot better than it's been since probably season 8 or 9 of the main show. So we pick up with this show. The main thing is we want a main question answered is, what is Rick Grimes doing? Where has he been? Because the show, in this time limit of the show, it's moved on like something like 10 years since he disappeared. And the question was, well, he never came back. The main crew back in the main show, they jumped ahead in time of many, many years. So what is going on? Where has he been, and what has kept him away this long? Because he wouldn't abandon his people and his family like that. So we find out in the first episode all of those answers. We get a lot, and this is one of the things that they've done a real good job with the show. They've answered a lot of long-standing questions. We'll get to many of them in this video. And they also did things that they paid off, things that have been around for a while, not only on the show, but in the comics. So right out the gun, one of the first things they pay off is the fact that in the comics, Rick loses his hand really early in the series when, way back with the governor. And the comic book version of the governor cuts off Rick's hand. And the TV show kind of alluded to it here and there. They they referenced it. They did a lot of that with certain things when adapting the show from the comics. But Rick never lost that hand. And then he finally, in the first couple minutes of this show, he's chopping off that hand, and we all knew it. As soon as we saw what he was doing, he's like, "Oh, they're gonna do it. They're gonna chop off the hand." I thought it was a dream at first, but no, it's the reality. Rick has lost a hand right out the chute. So we have Rick with this kind of bionic power hand fist thing that's got a retractable knife in it, which is pretty cool. Makes it easy for killing zombies. We also, in the course of this episode, find out that he's very resistant. He's tried to escape 4 times. He hasn't been successful any time. And he's got some friends in the Civil Republic. And he's hanging out with some people who may have ulterior motives to what the Civil Republic really wants to do. And we learn a lot more about that whole system in the 3 rings and the 3 cities. And that one of them, as was shown in one of the other shows, had collapsed, and it had a lot to do with the city that Rick is in, which is based around Philadelphia. We learn about what happened at the beginning of the whole epidemic, and one of the guys, Okfor, who is kind of Rick's superior in the show, and he's also his savior to some extent. He was leading a lot of the military, bombing a lot of cities. We saw it in the very first episode or one of the very first season of The Walking Dead, when Shane and Laurie were watching Atlanta getting bombed. This guy was part of the team that did that, and then later became the resistance against that. So that Okfor has a really rich history, and I want to touch on this really early. The cast, the co-stars on this show so far, especially the first 3 episodes, they are all really good actors, really interesting characters too. Okfor is one of those in this. Thorne is another character in here as well. She is like Rick. We find out she's also an A And we remember during the series, the letter A and the letter B later on, they had some significance that was kind of like a mystery, that the letters would show up in very prominent ways in a lot of shots, all the way back from the earlier seasons. And then later, when Jadis was introduced to the show, she tried to have Gabriel taken away and Negan taken away, and eventually she was able to give them Rick. They still suspect that she gave them Heath. Well, we know that she gave them Heath. But that's what she did at that time. She said that she didn't have an A, but she had a B, and Rick was a B. And we were all confused because she had said to Gabriel, I thought you were a B, and all of this stuff. So we never knew what it meant. So for years, this is years and years ago. So all these years, we didn't know what it was. People have been speculating for the longest time. We finally find out from Okfor what the whole damn A-B thing is. And as what we thought, A's are alphas. They are leaders. They are people who are like, you're like Rick, like Michonne, and to some extent like Jadis, which is, I'm kind of surprised, because Jadis, I would consider Jadis an A because she did lead a group of people. But then there's B's. B's are kind of like the hoi polloi. They are the average Joe. They just don't want to rock the boat as long as they got their stuff. They don't really care about what's going on. They just, hey, we just want to go along to get along. As long as you protect us and we can get food, we're good. We can care whatever atrocities you do, we're just going to turn a blind eye to it. It's that kind of dichotomy. And A's in the Civil Republic are killed because they don't want them. They're either released back into the wilderness, or they get murdered or whatever, or they run experiments on them or some other stuff like that. But the reason for that is that they don't want anybody in this new society that they're trying to build to kind of do an uprising, because one of the problems, and we saw this in the main series with a lot of these groups sometimes, is that somebody's always trying to take over the group. There's always somebody who's there.
A's and fucking B's!
With the exception of the Whisperers. Because the Whisperers, Alpha and Beta never really wanted to take over from Alpha. And that is, again, the same thing we have here at Alpha and Beta. The Betas don't want to take over from the Alphas, and the Alphas are happy with it that way.
A's and fucking B's!
So we go through the whole thing. We find out that Rick, actually, because of his friend Esteban, another great character actor in the show, tried to help him escape. He was going to escape, but a little girl kind of pulled him away. Eventually, Okfor lets Rick know what's going on. And because Rick is pissed that his escape attempts are getting thwarted, and that Okfor, he feels, kind of playing games with him. And then he goes, and Okfor reveals the fact that he knows about Michonne. He knows about the messages. He knows about the letters. He knows about where Rick came from and what he was about. So Rick, if you leave here, we're going to be forced, because we can't let outsiders know about this place because we don't want to get invaded. If you escape, we're going to have to kill you and everybody that we will find you. We know where we picked you up. So that is and I thought that was a great explanation. That was a really clever way for them to figure out a way to explain why Rick hadn't been around after all 9 years, 10 years, however long it's been on the actual main show. What kept him away that goddamn long? And it's the fact that he couldn't escape. And even if he did escape, he had to stop trying, because if he did succeed, he'd wind up getting everybody he knew killed. Because this, we thought that the Saviors were big. We thought that the Commonwealth was big. This is 20 times bigger. The CRM group is 20 times bigger than the Commonwealth, which on the main show was like the biggest community that we had ever seen. So they would all get squashed. Plus the fact that Michonne and Rick don't even know about that. They don't even know that what's going on back there, that the communities are all messed up. But anyway, and I think we're going to get some of that information in the show as things go on. So this ends with Rick kind of accepting his role. He goes with Okfor, becomes part of the thing. He throws away the mementos he has of Michonne and of little ass kicker Judith. He doesn't know about RJ, of course, and all the scratch paintings on the cell phones that he had that Michonne found in that boat along with his boots. He has to let that go in order to save them. He's convinced himself of this because, Rick, this is a big force. Rick knows what would happen, and it's most likely that everybody would get killed, and he And we've seen in the main series, Rick does not want that. That is the worst thing for him, is to think that he's going to get his people killed. He can't stand that, so he's not going to do it. We then end with the episode with Okfor dying, which was a shock to me. He gets blasted with a missile while they're flying in a helicopter. The copter crashes. It's an awesome special effects scene. Rick's out in the field. There's somebody killing all the other soldiers. The person comes up. We see the sword in the background, and of course it turns out that it's Michonne. She finally finds Rick. They have the reunion, which will be picked up in the next episode, because the second episode they set up really well with the whole story of Michonne, how she was on that trail. We catch up with the people that we saw in her last episode way back in the middle of season 10 of The Walking Dead, which is 4 years ago, something crazy like that. And what that all was about. And when we're introduced to Nat, which is one of my favorite characters, but unfortunately he doesn't last very long, same as Okfor. They have these great characters, some of the best characters they've written for the show in a long time, and they're dying off. So, which is good. I'll explain why that's good later on, though. But Nat is this awesome character. A bit of a pyromaniac, befriends Michonne because she's in a place that's not so friendly. They have the couple that was with them, the redhead and the brother she met in season 10. She helped them out. They're all on this little mission now because she explains she's trying to find her brave man. And they break away from their little caravan they were traveling with and go out into their own to try to find Rick, and they get bombarded by the CRM, who are experimenting with this gas. And it winds up doing bad things to the crew. We find out that the young lady's pregnant. She turns into a walker. The husband turns into a walker. It's very sad because, again, the one thing that they've done very well on the show, I keep reinforcing it, is the co-stars. A lot of these other shows, I could care less about some of the side characters, but I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of these side characters already in 1 or 2 episodes. I really adored the couple. I like Nat. I like Esteban. They're really great characters. I liked Okfor. I thought he was going to be around for a lot longer. But they're here today, gone today. Same thing with Nat. They finally get revenge on the CRM, and Nat is the one who fired the rocket that killed Okfor and crashed Rick's helicopter. We pick up with that. We see the reunion, but unfortunately Nat buys it, and Rick and Michonne have a bit of... They have a moment where I wish they could have just stayed in that moment, but of course reality set in because the CRM helicopter was coming, and Rick had to hold a gun on her. He had to explain to her really quickly what the hell was going on, as she needed to play along, and he had to get all of this information to her just so when the CRM arrived, they wouldn't shoot her dead on the scene. And Michonne does, and I think from Michonne's perspective, I can really empathize with it, that she probably came into this and then, the joy of finding Rick, and then the realization of, because, what's been going through her head is, where have you been? Why haven't you gotten back to us? And then she finds out almost instantly, oh, you're in some serious shit, Rick. Oh, I see why you didn't come home. This is some next level stuff we ain't never seen before. So that leads us into episode 3, where we see them trying to kind of conspire to escape, but Jadis has come in, and Jadis left us with the cliffhanger at the end of episode 2 about telling Rick, hey, I know what's going on. I know it's Michonne. We're all tied together. And Jadis does not want Rick and Michonne to escape, because if they do, it's going to fall on her and she's going to be in trouble. And she likes her life in the CRM. She doesn't want it disrupted. Again, a lot of interesting social commentary they're making with this. How if you are a have, you're probably more inclined to protect the system, even if it's corrupted. Even if you know that you can let some people go because they're good people, you don't even want to risk it. And she's the one that saved Rick's life, which is kind of crazy. But we also find out that we all knew that Jadis saved Rick's life, not really to save his life, but to get herself a spot in the CRM, because she didn't want to stay where she was. She was ostracized by the entire community. She wanted a new home. So that's Jadis's. Remember that from season 8. That's 8 and 9. That was Jadis's whole thing. So we get to the fact that, oh, by the way, Rick has the best burn on her with about that horrible haircut that we've all been talking about for years. Yeah, that needed to be said. Another one of those little Easter eggs they put in there for us. But as things go on, we also have to remember the fact that Okfor is dead. And they're spinning the story that Michonne kind of helped him out when she was the one that killed him. But Thorne, she knows better. And Thorne, she's getting promoted in the system, even though she's an A like Rick and she was rebellious like Rick. She kind of is comfortable with the system, and she sees, hey, this is the top of the food chain for humanity right now, and they're trying to do something good, but yeah, I got some issues with it, but it's the best we're gonna get, right? So she's kind of reconciled that, and there's a lot of questions as to whether or not Rick has reconciled that, and that's asked a lot in episode 3. Him and Michonne are trying to escape. They're trying to plan a way to escape. They do come up with a plan after Rick goes back and forth with Anne or Jadis and with Thorne, and then he even had, he's thinking about Major General Beale, who is the kind of the big baddie, I guess, or not so much a baddie, but he's the biggest figure in this show, played by Terry O'Quinn, by the way, who's like TV royalty. So he's got respect for it. You can tell there's a respect between the two of them from what we saw from the first episode, and even in this episode, Beale's saying, "Hey, look." He called him Rick. He might be the poison, but he also might be the cure or something like that. And he really knows that Rick has the ability to do great things and help lead the CRM to great things because he is that much of an A. But at the same time, Rick also has the potential to be a danger to the CRM because he could burn the whole thing down if he doesn't like the way they operate, which we know that's what Rick does. And Jada's even pointed out that, yeah, even as Rick as powerful as he was, he couldn't escape on his own. But now that Michonne's there, and this is just from Jada's knew it. She's not even going to F around with it. She just said, the two of you can do anything. Which I think is probably a overarching meta line for this entire series, is that Rick and Michonne can accomplish anything. And I think we're going to see them accomplish something really, really big. The biggest thing that they will ever accomplish as characters in this universe. So there is a bit of a split in the middle. Rick tries to trick Michonne into getting out of there because he's kind of convinced himself that he has to stay there so he can like pretend that she died so she can go home and take care of their kids. But the two of them couldn't leave because there'd be nobody to protect them because Jadis wouldn't do it. And Jadis already told him, like, if you guys leave, I'll be forced to tell them where you are so I don't get cooked and they can take care of you. So there's this conundrum there. Michonne does not take well to Rick trying to trick her into leaving him behind, and she's just holding on to faith, which is another thing that comes back from her story arc leading into all this, is that the lines about believe a little more, hope a little more, believe a little more, that keeps recurring with Michonne and her story arc in this series. And even at this point where Rick is basically, he literally said that he'd knock her out and throw her on her boat and send her back home if she didn't listen. It was over. Everything they had was broken, in that Andrew Lincoln way that he says things.
Everything we had is broken. C's and fucking B's.
So we got to that point, and Michonne, you feel that she's given up. And she sees the pictures, the guy that made the pictures that Rick had, and then she's reminded, no, he's still in there. He's been in this place too long, and I need to remind him of not only who he is, but who we are together. And the very last scene in episode 3 is her grabbing him while they're in a helicopter, opening the door and dragging him, and both of them jumping out of the helicopter, apparently obviously over water, I hope, and escaping the CRM because she's like, dude, you need to get away from these people and wake the hell up and realize who you are. Plus, I haven't told you a couple of things, which is where we're heading into now with the second half of the season. Episode 4, we all fully expect it's going to be Michonne and Rick exchanging stories about what's gone on for the past 8, 9, 10 years, however long it's been. And there's a lot that Rick didn't know about. We know what Rick has been through, but Rick doesn't know what happened after he left. He doesn't know what about Negan. Can't wait for Michonne to explain that story to him. And what happened to some of the people who died. Enid was, kind of the love interest for his son Carl. We did get a Carl reference in this series too. That was really awesome, actually, just as a side note. But, what happened with the Whisperers? He has no idea that the Whisperers were, who the Whisperers were, and what happened with them. But the interesting thing about that too is that there's a lot Michonne doesn't know, because Michonne left in the middle of the Whisperer War because Judith said everything was fine and go find the brave man, and she did. So Michonne has no idea what happened afterwards and what all the craziness that went on with Negan partnering up with Carol. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Michonne had left the show before the whole thing with Negan partnering up. It was revealed that Negan had been partnering up with Carol to take out Alpha. It'd be kind of an interesting little twist, though, if they got to that part and she said, oh, I knew that Carol had a secret. She had a secret weapon. And then she explains, in Rick's like, what's the secret weapon? It was Negan. What? And then explaining that Negan and Judith were like buddies, trying to explain that one. And of course, the big one that we want Michonne to tell him, outside of the fact that Daryl was looking for him for like 5 years in the wilderness, we want him to know that he has a son, RJ. I have a feeling that that's going to be, that they may play it. Now, it's The Walking Dead, so they may spin it, but I have a feeling and hope that that's the straw that breaks the camel's back and snaps Rick out of this thing about it, thinking that he can just stay in the CRM and not go back home, and that he can abandon, he just leave his family like that and not fight for them, even though it might mean certain death. That might be the one that snaps him out of it. But knowing The Walking Dead, she might say that, and then we expect that. But the other way Rick could respond to it is he could be angry, and that she didn't tell him that already, and he might resent it or something. So it's The Walking Dead. They do that stuff sometimes where they let you think that, no, there's no possible way that so-and-so and so-and-so, and then you go, oh, I didn't think they'd respond that way. So we're going to have to see what happens. The next episode comes up this week, so if you're on AMC Plus, you'll be able to watch it early. Of course, everybody else, well, I think most people watch it on AMC Plus now anyway, but the people that don't, we can watch it next Sunday. But so far as a synopsis, an overall review, I really am enjoying this. Especially every episode has been good. Episode 3 was really, every segment of that episode was tense. You didn't know what was going to happen. There's parts where you think people are going to get shot and killed, like, I don't know. And again, this is all new stuff. So there's no comic book lore that they have to adhere to as to who dies and who lives and who does what and who loses, who wins. So everybody, which was part of the problem with the TV show, especially the last couple seasons, because we knew there were characters that wouldn't die. At this point now, with these spinoffs, everything's back on the table. Anybody can die at any time. And that is what I like about The Walking Dead. That was one of the things that was a great appeal for the first, I'd say 7 or 8 seasons, or 6 or 7 seasons of The Walking Dead, for me, was that they really proved that anybody could go at any time. Anybody could go. And they haven't done that for a while. They hadn't done that since season 9 with the Pike scene, and which resulted in a problem because you wound up with too many characters by the end of the series, because they just refused to kill anybody off until the very last episode of the very last season. But like I said, with Okfor dying, I didn't expect that, and I'm kind of pissed. I'm like, man, I like that character. Same thing with Nat. If they kill Esteban, I'm going to be really upset. So we've had the stakes raised already with the characters, and it just seems to be like it's just better writing, a better thought out story. The plot is great, the acting is good, the atmosphere is just like so tense, because it's just this web of lies and manipulation and trying to figure out how is Rick and Michonne going to get out of the situation, because it's an impossible situation for them to get out of without endangering everybody that they love back home and themselves, and they might be responsible for it. But at the same time, they're being kept in cages, wild animals that do not need to be domesticated. So I want to know what you guys think about this. Have you been watching The Ones Who Live, the latest, not the last, but the latest of the spin-off series of the Walking Dead universe that's probably going to go on for a couple more years? We know these series are all going to converge at some point in time in one big finale. But again, I want to know what you guys think about this. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. And until next time that I find something entertainment I want to talk about, I will see you guys here for more news, reviews, and everything else on the Rantin Review Entertainment. Have a good day.
A's and fucking B's.